Hello little stitches, Miss Mary here. Today we are going to make our own fox cozy. And if you have a cup next to you, you can try it out as we are making it. If you picked up a kit from the library, the items inside the bag are a spool of thread, a self-threading needle, a small rectangle of dark felt, a larger rectangle of white, a very large, compared to the rest, rectangle of orange, and you will see some patterns. If you picked up a kit from the library, some items you still need from your house are a pair of scissors, a permanent marker or a marker because we're going to trace our patterns, and then some sort of cup. That way as you're sewing your cozy you can see how big of a cup size you want. If you weren't able to pick up a kit from the library, these are all the supplies you'll need, so if you pick up your own you can follow along with the video and still make it yourself. Alright, first we're going to grab our patterns and find your scissors, and we're going to cut out the main pattern, which is the big one. Now if you want to change the fox's ears at all, just cut it the way you want it to look. I just gave you the pattern to help get started, especially with the sleeve size. But if you want the ears to be a little different, this is your chance to cut it out the way you want it. And if you have a pencil, you could always draw it first before you cut it. It's our main part. And then, okay, so the triangle piece is the inside of the ears. So if you ended up making your ears a little bit different, you're gonna probably change the shape of that one a little bit depending on what you need. The circle is going to be the circle of the fox's face. And then there's a oval bean shape with a little bit of a point to it. That is our nose. Or not our nose, the fox's nose. And last shape is a smaller circle, and that's going to be for our eyes. Alright, now that we got those cut out, so our darker piece of felt is going to be for our nose, and then we're going to be making 2 circles for eyes on that one. I'm going to set that off to the side for a moment. The white felt is going to be our big circle for the nose, and then 2 of the triangle shapes for the ears is going to go on that one. I'm going to set that off to the side for a second. I'm going to trace my big one first. So I'm going to grab my permanent marker. I'm going to set that pattern on here, however it fits. And if you made your own ears, hopefully they fit in there, or you might have to make them a little bit smaller to fit on this rectangle. And I'm just going to trace it. We won't need this anymore unless you want to keep it to make other ones and buy your own felt. You can do that, but I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to cut this out. If you end up cutting on the inside of your outline, that's okay. But if you end up having some of your black outlines, we're going to end up sewing on the other side anyway. So just depending on where you're cutting and what this side looks like, you could either use it for inside your sleeve or outside. I'm going to set that off to the side. And then on to the next one. So I'm going to start with the white. I'm going to put the circle as close to the edge of the smaller side of the rectangle as I can, because I want to make sure that there's enough room for 2 of these ears. So if I put my circle right in the middle and traced it, I would be able to do it, but unless you made your ears any bigger, I might not be able to make them exactly how big that pattern is. Again, if you want to change the shape a little bit or make them a little bigger or smaller, you are more than welcome to do that. But I just want to make sure you have enough fabric so you're making those choices on your own. So I'm scooting it all the way down to the edge. I'm going to circle that. Okay, set it off to the side. And remember, we want 2 ears, so I'm going to trace that. I'm making my ears face the opposite way, and that way they fit in there better. They probably would fit next to each other, but I'm putting the wider part on the same side as the smaller part and the opposite, just so I get a little bit more room for cutting and tracing. And again, we are done with these patterns now. So if you wanted to throw them out, that's okay. If you wanted to keep them and make another one, you can do that. And then I'm going to move to cutting them out. Same for the orange. If I cut on the outside of my lines, I'm going to see some of that black. And that's okay because I can sew it on this way. And then we won't see it. But if you cut on the inside, that's okay too, and then you just won't see it at all. But you just don't want to cut it too small, unless that's how you want the fox to look. All right. You can kind of start setting up your fox so you can see a little bit of where everything's gonna go. All right, and then now we've got our dark one. So for the dark felt, we can try to trace it. I don't know if we'll be able to see it very well, so I'm just gonna hold the pattern on and cut around it. You could trace it and see if you could see it, but I'm gonna show you this way first. And before I start cutting, the other thing I'm gonna do is make sure I have enough room for 1 eye and 2 eyes. So I'm putting that nose as close to the edge as I possibly can. And the other thing I'm going to do is cut this part out. So I've got my nose piece. I cut it as close to the long edge of the nose as possible. And then I'm just going to hold it and cut the rest of it out. Now, if you were able to trace it and see your tracings, you wouldn't have to hold the pattern on, but I can't see mine. All right, so I got my nose. And then for the rest of it, I'm gonna fold it in half and then hold on to my circle pattern. So I don't have to do 2, I'm just gonna do it once and make 2. And if you ended up having a smaller amount, just make your eyes a little bit smaller. That's okay. And if you're folding it in half, then you can make sure that both of them are the same size, even if they're different than what mine are. All right. I'm gonna get all of those out of the way. Show you what I got here. So I just set everything on so I can kind of play around with my placement. But we are gonna be moving them as we sew. And you can see the ones I cut today are a little bit bigger than the ones on here. So if I wanna make them smaller, you are able to do that. So I might make these ears a little bit shorter. Yeah. Okay, now we gotta sew everything on. So I'm gonna take my thread, find where the end is, and unspool some of it. You don't need too much thread at once because if you go too long with it, it just gets knotted up. And since our needles are self-threading, I'm going to take my two ends and I'm going to knot it. So I put my two ends together. I take my finger, I roll it around, roll it down, so it's a big old knot, and then you pull down. You'll make yourself a nice little knot. Sometimes I do that twice. Perfect. You find the other end of that loop. You take your needle and you're gonna push that thread down, and then it will go in there. Sometimes if you push it down, it will break the thread. That's okay, it happens to me all the time. You just have to cut a new piece of thread. And you'll have plenty of thread for this activity today, so if you break a couple, that's okay. All right, we're gonna start with our ears. So I'm actually gonna take the eyes, nose, and mouth off for now. I'm gonna take one of the ears off just so as I'm doing this, it won't keep falling and getting in the way. So we want our end of our knot on the back, and the back is also where we want our black outlines to be. We're gonna take that, I'm gonna bring it up through the back, up through my triangle, that's the ear, the inside of the ear, and then back down through. Up again, over a little bit, through the orange, and down. So the nice thing with this one is we're not trying to put stuffing or anything in, so my stitches can be pretty far apart. I'm just trying to make sure there's enough that the ear doesn't fall off. So I am giving maybe my tiny pinky finger space between my stitches. But if you like the way the stitches look, you could do more. If you want to space them out even more, that's okay. There's no stuffing going in, so we're not too worried about how many we're putting, but we just don't want that ear to fall off. So I'm going to round the outside, and then I'm going to go around the whole thing. When you finish with your ear, or if you run out of string and need to get more thread to continue, we're gonna make our knot. So I'm gonna flip it over, I'm gonna go to the back, I'm gonna take my needle and I'm gonna go through some of the felt, but not all the way through the outside, just a little bit, push it through, and then I'm gonna make this nice little loop. And I'm gonna put my needle through the loop and pull up, and that's gonna make a knot. But I'm going to do that at least 2 more times, so that way it will be 3 total. Now, if knotting it that way is hard, you can cut your string. Instead of doing what I did, take your 2 ends and actually knot it like a normal knot. And if you do it that way, I would also do it 3 times. And then I'm going to cut the extras off. And that pretty much took all of my thread. So I'm done with my ear and I've used all my thread. So I have to re-thread my needle. Now that both of our ears are on there, we are gonna find the white part that's the whole mouth and nose part of our fox. I'm gonna find the middle in between the two ears and then move it down closer to the bottom because foxes kind of have like a nice long nose. But if you want to put it right in the middle, that's okay. Wherever you think it looks best. As we sew this one, it's gonna be the same as the ears. You can kind of space it apart. We're not putting any stuffing in, so you don't have to worry about the fluff leaking out or anything like that. It's just to sew that white onto the orange. Now, if I sew through here and bring my stitch way out here, I'm gonna have a lot of black showing. So the closer you keep it straight from the orange through the white close by, you can get nice little stitches so they don't look too big. So I'm going to start from the back again. I'm going to bring it up through the orange, up through the white, and then I'm not going to go way out here because if I do that, my thread line is going to be way far out. I'm going to bring it straight down to that orange. There's only a little bit of black that you might not even be able to see. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Very good. We got our ear, the inside of our ears in. We got our mouth and nose white part in. Next up is going to be the darker colors. So we've got the actual nose and our two eyes. So I'm going to start with one of the eyes. So again, this is one where you can kind of figure out on your fox, where do the eyes look best? I think I'm going to go right in the middle of my ear and bring it straight down to kind of find where I want that eye. I have my needle and thread. Make sure you have the knot on. I'm going to come up from behind, put it back through. Again, we're not putting any stuffing in or anything, so I'm going to at least give it 4 stitches, one at the top, one on the bottom, one to the side, and one to the other side, just to make sure it doesn't get stuck on anything, you get pulled off or anything like that. Just like that. So there's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to turn it to the back, and I'm going to put a knot in that one. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye. Next up, our little nose. Same thing with the eyes. I'm going to do the very edge, one all the way over, one at the very top, up and through, one at the other side, up and through, and then back down, and then one at the very end of this triangle part of it, and then down through the middle. I just don't want to get anything snagged on it, but that seems pretty good on there. And then I'm going to tie it on the back. Now, if you like what it looks like this, you don't have to do this next part. The next part I'm going to do is just with my thread, I'm going to add a line down from the point of the nose down, and then add a little stitch to one side and a little stitch to the other so it looks like a little mouth. I'm going to go up at the very end of the nose and down, depending on how long you want that part of the mouth to go. And then up over to the side. Sometimes I have to poke the needle through a couple of times. Don't push it all the way through until you like where it's at. So I can kind of see where the top is. So I'm going to go up a little bit higher. Okay. And then back down through the bottom of that line that you made. And then I'm going to try to find where that is on this side so they're even. So about there looks good. And then again, back down through that middle line, just like that. And you can make the smile a little bit bigger or longer. You just kind of keep going that way. As we were doing the outside, you can even make little whiskers if you want. So with this, you can make some other details if you would like to. But I'm going to tie it off there. All right, they look really good. Our last step is making it into this cylinder shape to fit on our cups. So you see how that line is there? So this is where, if you have the cup that you want the sleeve to be for, it's a little bit easier to kind of put it on there and try it. So if you put it on there and hold it, you could take your marker. Oh, I'm going to open it up first. I'm going to put it on there. Once you have where you want it to be, you could take your marker and just do one little dot at the middle, one little dot at the top, and one little dot at the bottom so we can line it up. That way, when I fold it over, I just have to match up those dots that we just made. And that's where I'm going to sew it. I'm going to still bring my needle up through the bottom so the knot's not on the outside. And when you first bring that up, you want to make sure that you're going through both sides of this felt. So they're folded over, make sure they both touch and overlap, and then we're going to be sewing down the part where they overlap. So we want to make sure we're on the top and the bottom part of the felt, but not through our fox's face. Just over the two parts that overlap. So I'm going to go just like that all the way across. And I'm going to leave a little bit. I'm going to try to make my stitches about the same size. So as far as it is when you see the thread, I'm making that space just as big. And then go down. Okay, when I get to the end, I'm going to go around. Now I'm running on a string, so I'm going to get my string back to the inside so I can make my knot, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. So if you ran on a string, that's okay. I'm still going to knot it on the inside. Okay, so on the way back, I'm gonna do the opposite of what we just did. I'm still gonna bring my thread up through, but what I'm gonna do is bring it up through where one of the stitches ends that I can see the thread. So I can see the start of this thread and the end of this thread. So I'm gonna push my needle up through the end of that one, and I'm gonna put it back down through the beginning of the next stitch. That way, it's gonna start to look like one line of stitches. So my next one, I'm gonna find where the end of this stitch is, bring my needle up through, find where the beginning of the next one is, and put it through. Bring it up through the end of that stitch. See, sometimes it takes a few times to find where that is. And down at the beginning of that one. Once we're at the end, again, I'm going to bring my thread around the edge and make sure I'm making my knot on the inside. The last thing to do is put your cup in, test it out. All right, little stitches, well, thank you so much for making our fox cozies or fox sleeve for our cups today. You are welcome to take a picture and send it into the library either via our email or our Facebook so I can see how they turned out. And thank you so much. Until next time, goodbye.